The next morning I woke before sunrise. I had barely slept. Susan's words kept repeating in my mind. They are trying to prove you are incapable of managing your own life. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee. For a few minutes I simply stared out the window. Then I made a decision. I was not going to spend another minute wondering what they were planning. I was going to find out. I called Susan. What should I do? Her answer was simple. Do not confront them. Do not threaten them. Do not tell them what you know. Let them keep talking. People reveal the truth when they believe they are winning. So I listened. That afternoon Emily called. Her voice was sweet. Almost too sweet. Mom, how are you feeling today? I knew exactly what she was doing. I said I was fine. She asked whether I had been sleeping. I said yes. She asked whether I had been forgetting things. I said no. There was a long silence. Then she said something that confirmed everything. You know you can trust me if you need help. I smiled even though she could not see me. Of course. After we ended the call I wrote everything down. The date, the time, her exact words. Then I called Susan again. She told me to schedule my own appointment with my doctor. Not because I needed to prove anything to Emily. Because I wanted an independent medical record. I went to my doctor's office 2 days later. My doctor knew me well. She asked why I was there. I told her the truth. My family is trying to convince people that I cannot take care of myself. She looked at me carefully. Then she asked me questions. What day is it? Who is the president? What did you have for breakfast? What medications do you take? What bills do you pay? What is your address? I answered every question. Then she gave me a small test. I completed it without difficulty. At the end she looked at me. Margaret, there is nothing in this evaluation that suggests you are unable to manage your affairs. I almost cried. Not from relief. From sadness. I thanked her. Then I asked for a copy of the evaluation. She gave me one. I placed it in the folder beside my deed and financial records. Now I had something they did not expect. Independent proof. The next step came sooner than I thought. Emily arrived at my house on a Thursday morning. She was carrying a large envelope. Daniel was with her. This time they did not ask permission to come inside. Emily walked through the doorway as if the house already belonged to her. Mom, we need to talk. I stepped aside. Come in. They sat in the living room. Emily placed the envelope on the table. I knew what was inside. She told me the medical evaluation had been arranged for my own safety. I said nothing. She said the doctor would help determine whether I could continue living alone. I asked which doctor. She gave me a name. It was not my doctor. It was someone I had never met. I looked at Daniel. He looked away. I asked why my own doctor had not been consulted. Emily said there was no reason. I smiled. There was every reason. She became irritated. Mom, you are making this difficult. I asked her one question. Who requested the evaluation? She did not answer. Daniel finally spoke. We are just trying to help. I nodded. Then I asked another question. Why did you already contact a real estate agent? Silence. Emily's face changed. Daniel stood up. How did you find that out? I smiled. Because you left the email open. That was the moment they realized I knew more than they thought. Emily began crying. She said they had only spoken to an agent. Nothing had been signed. I told her that was not the point. The point was that they were planning my future without me. She said they were trying to protect the family. I looked at her. No, you are trying to protect your plans. That sentence broke something between us. Emily stood up. You always think you are right. I looked at her. Maybe I am not always right. But I know when someone is trying to take something that belongs to me. Daniel stepped closer. You need to understand that things are going to change. I looked him directly in the eyes. They already have. He did not understand. Not yet. That evening I called Susan. She told me it was time to stop waiting. The next morning she filed the necessary legal documents to protect my property. She also helped me place additional protections around my financial accounts. Then she did something else. She contacted the people involved in the medical evaluation. Everything changed after that. The doctor who had been approached agreed to speak with Susan. He explained that Emily and Daniel had given him a completely different story. They had told him I was confused. They had told him I had forgotten important financial obligations. They had told him I was becoming unsafe. They had never mentioned that I had already completed an independent evaluation. They had never mentioned that I had been managing my own finances successfully for decades. They had never mentioned that I was working with an attorney. And they certainly had not mentioned their conversations about selling my house. Susan asked the doctor to review the information. He agreed. A few days later he withdrew from the evaluation. Emily was furious. She called me. What did you do? I answered calmly, nothing. I simply told the truth. She screamed that I was destroying the family. I said something that made her go silent. You started this when you decided my life was an opportunity. She hung up. I knew then that the relationship might never be the same. But I also knew something else. I was no longer afraid. A week later I received a letter. It was from a law firm. Emily and Daniel had hired an attorney. They were claiming that they were concerned about my mental capacity. They wanted access to certain records. They suggested that I was refusing help. They even claimed I had become paranoid. I read the letter twice. Then I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was so predictable. Susan told me not to worry. She prepared our response. We included my medical evaluation, my financial records, the property documents, the emails, the timeline of their actions, and evidence showing that I had been managing my affairs independently. Then something unexpected happened. The bank contacted me. Their fraud department had noticed unusual activity connected to my property. Someone had attempted to begin the process of using the house as collateral. The request had not been completed, but it had been started. And the name attached to the request was my husband's. My daughter had told me this was about protecting me. Now I had proof that someone was trying to turn my home into money. I gave everything to Susan. She forwarded the information to the appropriate authorities. Then we waited. 2 weeks later I received another call. This time it was from an investigator. She wanted to meet me. I invited her to my attorney's office. She asked me questions for nearly 2 hours. I answered every one. She asked about Emily. I told her about the good years too. I did not want revenge. I wanted the truth. She asked about Daniel. I told her everything I knew. She asked about the property. I gave her the documents. Then she asked about the medical evaluation. I handed her the copy from my doctor. She studied it. Then she looked at me. Mrs. Harris, you appear to have done everything correctly. I smiled. I have spent my whole life keeping records. She smiled back. It may have saved you. The investigation continued, and then the truth finally began coming out. Emily and Daniel were struggling financially. They had accumulated significant debt. They had been looking for ways to solve it. My house was worth far more than they could ever afford. They had convinced themselves that because I was old I would eventually need their help. And once they decided I needed help, they decided they should control the money. It was never about my safety. It was about access. That was the hardest truth of all. My own daughter had looked at her mother and seen an asset, not a person, not the woman who had stayed up all night when she had pneumonia, not the woman who had worked extra hours to pay for college, not the woman who had sat beside her through heartbreak. She saw a house, a bank account, a retirement fund, a number. I spent several nights thinking about that. Then I stopped asking why. Some questions have no answer that will make the pain disappear. I focused on what I could control. My future, my home, my peace. 3 months later the case reached a formal hearing. Emily and Daniel sat across from me. They looked nervous. For the first time I saw fear in their faces. Not fear for me, fear of consequences. Their attorney tried to argue that they had only wanted to help. Susan placed the documents on the table. Then she presented the medical evaluation. Then the emails. Then the financial records. Then the evidence showing that they had discussed selling my property before they had even obtained legal authority to manage it. The room became very quiet. Emily looked at me. Mom, please. I looked at her. I wanted to remember the little girl. I wanted to forget the woman sitting across from me. But both were the same person. That was the part that hurt. The hearing continued. The evidence spoke for itself. No shouting was necessary. No dramatic speech was needed. The truth was enough. The court found no basis to remove my decision-making authority. The property remained under my control. The financial accounts remained protected. And the attempts to interfere with my finances were formally documented. Daniel faced serious legal consequences. Emily was not jailed, but she was forced to confront what she had done. For a long time she would not speak to me. I accepted that. Not every relationship can be repaired immediately. Some wounds need distance before they can even begin to heal. Months later I received a letter from Emily. It was several pages long. She apologized. She admitted she had allowed fear and money to change her. She admitted that she had convinced herself she was helping me. She said she hated herself for what she had done. I read the letter slowly. Then I folded it. I did not answer immediately. I waited, because forgiveness should never be rushed. Eventually I wrote back. I told her that I loved her. I told her I would always love her. But I also told her that love was not enough to rebuild trust. Trust would have to be earned. One day at a time. One honest decision at a time. She accepted that. We began talking again. Not every day, not every week, sometimes only once a month. But slowly something changed. She stopped asking about my money. She stopped asking about my house. She started asking about me. How are you feeling? What did you do today? Have you been sleeping well? Those questions felt different. They sounded like love again. One Sunday she came to visit. She brought flowers. She stood in the doorway. I invited her inside. She looked around the house. The same house she once wanted to sell. Then she said something I will never forget. Mom, I understand now. I asked what she understood. She said, your house was never the thing I was trying to take. I was trying to take your choices. I nodded. That is exactly what you were doing. She started crying. So did I. I hugged her. But I did not hand her a key. That part mattered. Forgiveness did not mean giving her control. It meant letting go of the anger while keeping the boundary. There is a difference. Today I still live in my home. The roses in my backyard are taller. The kitchen has new cabinets. My granddaughter visits every weekend. Sometimes we bake cookies. Sometimes we sit outside. Sometimes we do nothing. And I love those quiet moments. Because they remind me that life does not end when someone betrays you. Sometimes betrayal is the beginning of a different life. A stronger one. A more honest one. I also started volunteering at a local community center. I speak with older women about protecting their finances. I tell them what I learned. Keep copies of important documents. Know what you own. Read everything before signing. Never let someone make you feel stupid for asking questions. Have people you trust outside your immediate family. And most importantly, do not surrender your independence simply because someone tells you they're helping. Help should make you safer, not smaller. I used to think being a good mother meant sacrificing everything for my children. Now I understand something different. Being a good mother does not mean allowing your children to hurt you. You can love someone deeply and still say no. You can forgive someone and still keep boundaries. You can miss someone and still refuse to let them back into the part of your life where they once caused damage. There is nothing cruel about protecting yourself. There is nothing selfish about protecting your future. And there is nothing wrong with starting over at 71. People sometimes think old age is the end of the story. It is not. It is simply another chapter. Sometimes it is the chapter where you finally stop living for everyone else. The chapter where you discover your own voice again. The chapter where you learn that peace is worth more than approval. That is the chapter I am living now. And if you are listening to my story tonight and you recognize yourself in it, please hear me. Do not wait until someone has taken everything before you decide that enough is enough. Pay attention to the little signs. The questions about your money. The sudden concern about your memory. The pressure to sign documents. The suggestion that you are too old to understand. The people who say they are helping while quietly taking away your choices. Trust your instincts. Ask for professional advice. Keep your records. And never be ashamed to protect what you worked your whole life to build. Your children are not entitled to your savings simply because you gave birth to them. Your relatives are not entitled to your home because they think they deserve it. And your age does not make your voice less valuable. You are still the owner of your life. The day my daughter tried to take my house was one of the most painful days I have ever lived through. But it also taught me one of the greatest lessons. Sometimes you do not find your strength until someone tries to take it away. I thought I was protecting a house. In the end I was protecting myself. And once I did that, everything changed. So tonight I want you to remember one thing. Never confuse love with surrender. Love can have boundaries. Love can say no. Love can close a door. And sometimes closing that door is exactly how you open the future. If this story touched your heart, then stay with Grandma Stories and Life Lessons. There are many more stories waiting to be told. Stories about betrayal, stories about courage, stories about family, and stories about ordinary people who discovered that they were stronger than anyone believed. Thank you for listening. Take care of yourself. Protect your peace. Protect your future. And remember, you are never too old to begin again.